What are your suggestions to folks who've got a book idea, but the idea is not fully baked yet?
So I would say that there are a couple of things that need to happen at the same time. So one of the challenges, people have this idea that they could write a book and they could instantly show up in online spaces, and then because they've published the book, it will sell. You really want to begin with the end in mind and give both your online audience and your ideas time to grow. So the best way to refine an idea as you think about writing a book is to just start to write and share stuff. You can start to test it out.
Welcome to another episode of From Startup to Wunderbrand with Nicholas Kuhne. Welcome everyone to another episode. So super excited to have you all join us again. It's winter now, getting to winter here in Norway. So hence I'm wearing my little gilet. It's a new word I used. I thought it was just a puffer jacket or a vest, but a gilet is the word I'm told I should use. So today we have Becky Robinson, founder and CEO of Weaving Influence. She's an author, keynote speaker, book marketing expert, and podcast host. And I think it's very interesting looking at the difference between bios that are written for long form and bios that are written for LinkedIn. LinkedIn goes straight to the point of what you are. Weaving Influence is a full-service marketing agency that specializes in digital and integrated marketing services and public relations for book authors, including business leaders, coaches, trainers, speakers, and thought leaders. So, Becky, welcome.
Thank you, Nicholas. It's great to be here with you today.
So I should mention that this is not your first rodeo. So you're a podcast host and you've helped clients launch over 200 books. So let's maybe go into what got you into focusing. It's quite a niche in terms of delivering books. And isn't it an anachronism now, books?
Well, I don't think so. I think books are alive and well, although, certainly there are different formats in which people consume content these days. But I am still seeing books as really integral parts of people's journeys. And for myself as an entrepreneur, I have seen the way that writing a book about my expertise has actually helped me to catapult my business into new growth. So for those who might be listening who have started a business or have a particular area of expertise, you may want to consider this a sign that you should consider whether writing a book could help you expand the growth of your organization.
What better business card than a book, right?
Yes, and I think not only a business card to let people know about your expertise, Nicholas, but there's also this element of letting people get to know you personally as the founder or the business owner and to get a sense of your values and how you work. So what I have noticed is it's almost like this magical moment when I get on a call with a prospective client. I have a practice, Nicholas, whenever anyone reaches out to inquire about working with me, the very first thing I do is offer them a free signed copy of my book. So suppose, Nicholas, you went and filled out a form on my website. You're going to get an automated email that invites you to schedule a meeting with me and offers the book. So what I've found is that I get on calls with prospective clients, and many, many times they'll hold my book up on camera. They'll say, I've been reading your book. They'll call out something that helped them, or they'll call out the reason why they want to work with me as being tied somehow to what they pick up on in the book about who I am and how I work. So it's not even only about the book shows my credibility that I know what I'm doing when I talk about growing an online presence, but it's also that like the spirit or values that comes through in the book that can connect with someone or resonate with someone. Or alternatively, it could be a clue to them that we're not the right fit.
Well, what a great way to sort of filter out clients. And who's going to say no to a free book anyway? So I think that's a very good marketing tactic. And let's go into that before we actually go into your book. You've obviously figured out, what your cost per acquisition is for a new client. And a book is quite a cheap acquisition tool if you get it right. Huh? So maybe talk me through that and how other folks can use your services at Weaving Influence and this concept of a book as a sales tool and how you should price it in your head. Because I think people say, oh, that's quite expensive. I'm going to give a book that's worth $20 or $50. That's expensive. I can get clicks for 30 cents.
Well, yeah, I think it depends upon like the quality of the interaction that you have, and also potentially, how important it is to you to to be sure that you have the right clients. So, I wouldn't say, Nicholas, that everyone who I send the book to reads it. But I would say that for those authors or clients who aren't authors, for those people who choose to read the book, they're going to be far more positioned to be successful with the investment that they're making with our company. As far as our company services go, we might start someone or bring them in the door for a course that costs, say, $1,000 or a strategy that costs $3,000. Or, if they do a bigger package with us, it could range from $10,000 to $70,000 across a period of time. And so when you think about it, my cost per book is probably $10, $12. I pay $10 to ship the book. I include some collateral in the book. But the magic is that even for those people who don't hire us, whether they remember me because I sent my book and it sits on their desk and they refer me to someone else, or like you just don't know the magic that a book can create. And to me, a $20 investment for the lifetime of a relationship is minimal. And the benefits I've seen from distributing my book since it was released to those people who might choose to work with me, you can't even begin to compare the value that I receive compared to the cost that I invest.
So it's very important for folks to understand their customer lifetime value and, again, cost per acquisition. So now that we've spoken about some of the details on the marketing side, let's go into the actual book. So the book is called Reach, Create the Biggest Possible Audience for Your Message, Book, or Cause. So obviously, if you're going to send this book out and it's trash, nobody's going to call you. So you obviously put a lot of attention into this book. Tell me about the writing process. Tell me about some of the details in the book and just the process.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, one note is that from the time I founded my company, I was enamored with the idea of becoming an author. So working with authors and seeing what they experienced. I wanted back in 2013, when my business was quite new, to write a book then. It took me about a decade before I actually got a contract with the publisher, wrote the book, and brought it to market. So my book launched in April of 2022, which was just before the 10-year anniversary of my company. So a note about that is that I'm glad now that I waited, because that way I had so much more experience and deeper insights to share from what I had learned along the journey. Like, I thought as a baby entrepreneur back in 2012 that I had something to say. And I think my book was far better because I did the work across those 10 years before finally bringing the book out. So I had pitched books to my publisher, to the editor who eventually, gave me a contract several times and gotten several no's before I finally got a yes on a traditional publication deal, which I think that's a common experience of people who want to write books and who want to traditionally publish. You might hear a lot of no's. I would say if you're an entrepreneur who is wondering about writing a book and incorporating it in your business as that business card or as a sales piece or a credibility builder, self-publishing is a great option these days. But I would caution anyone to be sure that you invest in a quality product. So you want to have a professional editor, you want to have a professional cover designer, professional interior designer, typesetter, all of that. Because like you said, Nicholas, if my book were trash, then my sending it out to people would not really help to fuel my business offerings. So my experience was, I wanted to write a book for a long time. I finally got a contract. And from the time I got the contract to when my first draft was due was only about 7 months. So I had to really get to work fast to write the book once I had the contract.
So it this is sort of pre-ChatGPT, so you couldn't just slam in a couple of words and poof, out comes a book. But I think the point about an editor extremely important, and I reference this the whole time when I speak to folks who have written. The amount of red that you see when you get your first draft back is quite terrifying, actually, because you realize, whoops, okay, this is why we pay editors. Now, let's go into the theme, which is create the biggest possible audience for your message, and it ties into books and causes, etc. Let's go into a bit of the background. What is the main outtake of this book. Who is this book for?
Sure. This book really is for anyone who wants to build an online presence to drive results, whether that's for a business or a message, an idea that you have. Obviously, because I work with books, I do talk a lot about what it takes to grow the traction for a book. Um, it really could be anything. I think about, someone who wants to make a difference in the world through their ideas. This book is for them. And the case that I'm making is that when you choose to show up online in the same powerful ways that you show up in real life, you can create the biggest possible audience for your work and create lasting impact for your work.
A problem I've seen with a couple of publishers that I've seen, and since you're in the business of promoting writers, it's sometimes not possible to polish a turd, as we say in South Africa, or put lipstick on a lipstick on a pig. How often have you had ideas which are just not worth sending out there? And what do you suggest to folks who are, as you mentioned, you were not ready necessarily 10 years ago to put out a book? What are your suggestions to folks who've got a book idea, but the idea is not fully baked yet?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nicholas. So I would say that there are a couple of things that need to happen at the same time. So one of the challenges, and I will for sure get to your point about what do you do about an idea that's not fully baked. But, people have this idea that they could write a book and they could instantly show up in online spaces. And then because they've published the book, it will sell. You really want to begin with the end in mind and give both your online audience and your ideas time to grow. So the best way to refine an idea as you think about writing a book is to just start to write and share stuff. You can start to test it out. So if you're using social media, maybe it's LinkedIn or Instagram, or my personal favorite right now is Threads. You start to socialize some of your ideas. You start to share it in small bursts and you see what resonates with people. It may be that you're sharing things and you're getting crickets. Well, that could be the algorithm or it could be a bad idea. So being able to present your ideas in different ways, I think the more that you share your perspective, your ideas will get clearer. And that can certainly come during the editorial process when you work with an editor, but it also could come because you're out there sharing and writing about content over time. So before I ever wrote my book, I probably wrote 1,000 blog posts. I probably wrote 30,000 tweets when Twitter was the platform that I chose. The best way to refine your ideas is to just write them and get feedback and adjust them and adapt and talk about them and bounce ideas off of people and be in conversation just to show up with those ideas. And as you move along, they will become more clear and you'll be able to test the good ideas and the bad ones and see what sticks.
That's such a great insight. And I often mention that writing is a craft. And one of the reasons lecturers are able to write good books sometimes is because they've done the same lecture over and over, have refined the approach, have refined the idea, have had feedback from students, and then can clarify their ideas quite nicely. So the idea of sharing posts, sharing blogs, seeing which ones get the best response or how people are engaging with them, absolutely is a good testing market. And it brings to mind one of my favorite cartoonists, Hergé, who wrote Tintin. I'm not sure if you know Tintin at all. It's a very popular European comic, but he used to do little panels in a kid's newspaper called Le Petit Vingtième. And those initial drawings, which are quite raggedy looking, were completely redrawn and the story adapted a little bit into a full book, which just became a huge international seller. So, yeah, your ideas that are out in the ether can definitely be refined later into a book. Now, you talk about a framework in your book. So let's go, before I go into that, you mentioned Threads. Now, you're the first person I've ever met who uses Threads and has been sending anything on Threads. Maybe tell me why Threads. Obviously, I can probably guess why not X, but why Threads and why is it useful? Who's the target market, etc.?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I will tell you that I use LinkedIn and Instagram more professionally. And when Threads started, I got on pretty early. And the reason was because I loved in the beginning of Twitter, now X, I love the real time interaction where you could meet and connect with real people and have real conversations in real time. And I obviously stopped using X a long time ago. And so I loved Threads for that just humanness, like it's a real place. And I don't really use it professionally so much as, I'm a runner, although at the current time I'm injured and I can't run. But I formed a community of other people who are running and talking about their races and talking about their training. I found some people who like to read books and are recommending books, and a bunch of authors who are there. And I'm not really there because I want the authors to hire me. I'm there because I like to read and I like to hear about what people are reading. So I imagine there could be a way in which Threads could fuel business opportunities or growth of one's platform. But I'm really there more for experimentation and fun than anything else.
Well, I'm going to go use my little time machine and go back 10 years. And there's this book called 31 Days of Twitter Tips, which I heard is quite good. I guess that's due for an update, Becky.
It probably is, and we've talked about taking that off of Amazon where it's a Kindle book. It's definitely a very different kind of book than the book I later wrote with a traditional publisher, but maybe it's 31 days of Threads tips.
Why not? I mean, that could be self-published. I doubt, that's probably the right way to go about that.
For sure.
Let's talk about, so you sell services of marketing a book. And you know the saying of a cobbler's children always, never have shoes. How I want to see if this is true with you. How have you gone about marketing your book, and what channels have you used? Obviously, you are here on a podcast, and I think podcasts are absolutely exploding and growing in a fantastic way to share content in in an organic fashion like this. But talk to me about before you published the book, publishing the book. It's been out for 2 years now, and how you are repurposing content from the book to get extra in order to get extra exposure.
Sure. So I think that in the case of me marketing my book, it is the opposite of a cobbler's son having no shoes, because we realized that it would be really, really tricky if we didn't actually do all of the things that we recommend that our clients do. So we wanted to use the launch of my book almost as like a demonstration of what's possible and what you can do to implement all the possible best practices to launch a book. So we had a pretty extensive plan for marketing my book, which included updating my personal brand website at beckyrobinson.com with a book to promote a page to promote the book. I did a new photo shoot, which is something that I recommend to all my clients. I invested in a pretty high end video book trailer, which is something that I recommend. One of the things that I did for my book is I wanted to get at least 100 Amazon reviews in a short amount of time. So before my book came out, I sent 400 copies of my book to people to get early Amazon reviews and to spread the message of my book. And along with shipping and all the other collateral items that I sent, that was the $6,000 investment just in getting my book into people's hands before the book came out. So I did do a media campaign and continue that to this day. Really anything that I would recommend that a client did, we used it on my book. We used Amazon ads. We did book awards. We did webinar events. We did a virtual launch party where we brought people together live in real time. So we really wanted to use my book marketing as a demonstration of what our team can do. And if anyone wanted to hire us to do for them what we did on my book, it would cost a lot of money because we really put a ton of resources into the promotion of my book. So Nicholas, you asked about repurposing content. The chapter in my book that's my favorite chapter is chapter 7, and I talk about the different ways that you can repurpose and reuse content. The funny thing is, when I wrote the chapter, it was really before Gen AI tools were being used the way they're being used now. So if I were to update the book now, I would talk about the amazing possibilities of using generative AI to take the content of your book and to break it up into smaller, shorter bursts. But to this day, my team does help me with crafting some social media content at times. And so they'll go back in to the book and pull out quotes and make graphics to share on my Instagram, or use some topics in the book to inspire a longer form LinkedIn post. The book is an amazing asset that can, be repurposed and reshaped in various ways over time to reach new audiences. My favorite way that I ever repurposed the content in my book was doing a live course to teach others the content in the book. I have subsequently changed the format, but for a while I was doing a course, and the segments of the course exactly mirrored the chapters in my book. I now am doing that course in a quite different way, but for a time, you could almost say that the individual modules of the book inspired the modules
Mm.
of the course. And, um, you know, if you're writing nonfiction, especially prescriptive nonfiction, there likely are just so many ways that you can use the book to create more content. I think I counted it up in this chapter, and I explained the way one book could become something like 300 different pieces of content or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah.
So, if you're not already repurposing and reusing your content, I would encourage you to explore the ways that you can take the already existing value that you've created, because likely there's content you've created that people have never seen.
Well, I love the idea of using it to generate additional revenue through creating courses. And I think that makes sense, specifically with your book. And obviously, you practice what you preach, because I see here in 2023, so just last year, you received the prestigious Axiom Business Book Award in the Advertising, Marketing, PR category, and were a gold winner in the Nonfiction Book Award, and named a distinguished favorite in the category of Marketing and PR for the New York City Big Book Awards. I mean, these are not hokey pokey exercises. I take it you were somewhere in the top 10 in Amazon at some stage as well.
Well, not the top 10 overall, but when the book was released, one of the things we do with our clients is try to help them rank as a hot new release in their category. So one of my favorite moments was when my print book, my ebook, and my audiobook were all like the top three, the PR category that day, for the new releases.
Awesome. Well, that's
That was
that's
fun.
super exciting. Yeah. So I'm in the process of, I've written sort of my outline for my book, which is all on BRICS, which is the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa economic unit, so, and how to build emerging market brands. So that's what I'm going to be working on. So I'll probably come to you to get me on the New York City Big Book Awards. That looks really cool. Now, I do want to ask, and this is something that authors need to keep in mind. And my grandfather's a bestseller author in the children's category in South Africa, and my father as well. So there's a lot of writing in the family. But you don't always make terribly much money out of writing a book. So when you set out to write this book, you had a clear idea in terms of this is going to be a marketing tool, I guess. But for folks who want to write a book to make money, what can you tell them about that? Because maybe it goes into, did you set yourself a target of how many books you wanted to sell, how many downloads you wanted to get in terms of KPIs when you started out as a marketer?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Nicholas. And what I would say is that the average self-published book doesn't sell more than a few hundred copies. And the average traditionally published business book doesn't sell more than a few thousand copies. So for a book like mine to sell 10,000 in a year is doing quite well. So that was the goal that I had set for myself. I didn't nearly reach it. So despite everything that I know about marketing books, the reality is that it's a very noisy market. There are millions of books on Amazon, and it is very difficult to get traction. So I would say if your goal is to make money from writing books, you may want to rethink that goal. There are very few people who make a significant amount of money writing books. Now, that said, I supported some authors who have seen some amazing results. And I think the first year they sold 13,000 copies of their book, and they're continuing to see royalties come in six figures in a year, like $100,000 that they're making in a year, I think is what they told me on the royalties of their book. So it can happen. But if you are writing a business book, it's far more likely that what you're going to see is the revenue for your organization or business offerings will grow. So in my own organization, and I can't remember all the exact numbers, but it was like 30 to 40% growth that we saw the year after the book came out in
Wow.
terms of revenue. So that's more money, obviously, than what you might make on royalties. I got a royalty check a couple of weeks ago. It was $60. It was nothing, right? Um, Now, on the fiction side, if you're a fiction author, one of the ways to make money is to write more books. And so, as a fiction writer, if you are writing great stories and people love them, having more is a better way to ensure that you're going to make money. The more you have, people will buy one and then they'll want to read the others. But really, my best advice is just don't think about writing books as a means to making money. Think about writing books as a means to share a message, make a difference, create legacy, build credibility, drive business results, but not money on the royalties alone, especially if you're traditionally publishing, because the royalties that I get are about $1 for every book that I sell.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like that you talk about the legacy because my grandfather's books were first published in 1958, and I republished a 50-year version about 3 years ago, and it went into the top 10 again. It was almost number one in the kids' books section again. That was cash money. That paid for a holiday, and we still get some revenue trickling in for that. It means that I can say, oh, my grandfather, the author. It does fill you up with a little bit of pride. I think especially when you are writing business books are nice, but on the fiction side, saying your father or grandfather's an author or mother, etc., is an author is quite a cool thing. Now, you also mentioned that you work for business leaders, coaches, and trainers. I guess these are the guys that need to put out a lot of content and can reuse content from a book or use it in workshops as well. Do you have any interesting clients that you'd like to mention, or folks who've gone through this process that maybe stand out for you? You don't have to say names, but maybe just some examples of folks that you've dealt with that have stuck out for you.
Well, there are so many. And given that you have a European audience, I recently worked with an author who initially published his book in German, and he came to me when he was publishing his book in English. And it's been interesting to see the way his opportunities in the world have catapulted. He happens to be a coach, but the book has opened up opportunities for him as a keynote speaker around the world and has been a really satisfying journey for him to create and share his ideas first in German, which is his heart language or whatever, and then in English as well. I had mentioned the authors who are actually making money and sold 13,000 copies. That's an author pair, and one is from Germany and one is from the US. And the cool thing that's happened for them is they've also created a training program around their book, and they're certifying people to teach their content around the world as well. So, honestly, Nicholas, I work with the best people. Um, Doing this company and the number of authors that I've met and served over the years, there are people who are deeply committed to their work, who are deeply knowledgeable and insightful, and every single one is a joy. And I'm so grateful just for the people I've met through this journey.
Well, that's why I love talking to authors, because you've had to do the hard work to understand, to really think about what should this chapter be called, how does this all fit into each other, and it means that the discussion goes much smoother. They've got their talking points, they're very clear, versus folks who are, well, I kind of do all sorts of things. They haven't really being able to classify their thoughts and structure their thinking. So I think writing a book is a fantastic opportunity to structure your thinking and come across more seriously.
I agree. Well, I wish you the best with your book, Nicholas. Like, when should we expect it?
I've already written the outline and the beginning of each of the chapters. Now it is the research phase. So I've said, okay, this is what I want to talk about and the different countries. Now I've got to go and interview people, and now I've got to do the actual hard work. So it'll probably be next year this time that a good draft comes out. So I'm going to follow your tips. I'm going to start sharing some of my research and my initial findings as I go along, so you can keep an eye out for that. Yeah, so that will be interesting. And if I need a US publicist, I'll come and chat to you.
That sounds great. Thank you.
So for those who have got a book idea or would like to know how they can make a book idea a reality, and also not just write the book, but do all the hard work around it so that it gets seen by folks, where can I send them, Becky?
Sure. Well, I'd always welcome people to find us at weavinginfluence.com, where you can find out about our various service offerings. And for those authors who are self-publishing, who need support on a professional editing, design, book production, if you want to call it that, that is a service that we offer. So we can not only help you market the book, but we also can help you produce the book. So you can find out all about those at weavinginfluence.com. And for those who might want to read my book or learn more, it's on online retailers everywhere. And finally, if you are interested in learning about book marketing, my podcast is called the Book Marketing Action Podcast. I have 140 plus episodes, so you can come and listen to my show as well. If you're listening to this, you might be a podcast listener. You can listen to my show too.
That's excellent. Some great resources there. Well, Becky, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing the revisions with the generative AI in your second edition.
That sounds great.
I really do appreciate your comments. So why not go and watch this live on YouTube, or go to my website, kuhne.no. That's Kuhne.no for more information.